This morning we are talking with David Alade, and we're at Century Partners in Detroit. David, what's your position with Century Partners?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is David Alade. I'm the co-founder and managing partner for Century Partners.
And your other co-founder is here this morning, Andrew Cologne. Yeah. So I appreciate you having us here this morning.
Of course.
Appreciate the coffee. Nice digs. This is the first
Not
time
bad,
I've been in the office here. It's really impressive.
Yeah. We actually
So
built this office out all by ourselves. It was so this is one of the few black-owned buildings left downtown. So that was important for us to be the black-owned space. And we built out the lighting infrastructure, the conference rooms, and hopefully we'll be here for some time.
that's great. So in a nutshell, tell us what Century Partners does.
Sure. So Century Partners is a neighborhood-focused real estate development company. And our goal is to provide housing that is well maintained, that is well renovated, that is at an economically accessible price point relative to some of the more expensive areas in the downtown and midtown corridors, and provide great places and communities for people to live in the Detroit and Metro Detroit area.
So before we get into the particulars of the business, maybe you can give me a sketch of your own background.
Sure. So I'm from South Jamaica, Queens, New York, which I'm very proud of. I attended Columbia University. I graduated in 2009, majoring in urban studies and economics. Following an internship at Lehman Brothers, I was fortunate enough for Barclays to honor my full-time offer. So I was at Barclays working on Wall Street in New York from 2009 to 2013. I worked at Credit Suisse from 2013 to 2015. My experience in banking was really focused on providing sort of asset-based solutions for auto companies like Ford, GM, and Chrysler, as well as all types of companies that had leases, loans, assets on the balance sheet that we could monetize, structure up the cash flows, assess them, and sell to investors. So it provided a really good background actually for real estate. Real estate is very similar. It's just an asset. It has a cash flow. If you can understand the cash flow, you can value the asset. And particularly now, when you have a period of dislocation, the ability to assess value can be very, very important. And so my background coming out of the recession was how do you really stress the cash flow of an asset to make good investment and valuation decisions, which is aided as well in our time since moving to Detroit in 2018.
So I remember when you first came to Detroit, I met you soon after you came to Detroit, and I can't remember, I think it was 2014 or something. But how long has the company been in business?
So we bought our first asset in 2014, and Andrew and I moved to Detroit in 2015.
Okay.
Andrew in February, and me in May. I think we met probably later that year, that summer of 2015.
So what motivated you to do this?
So many things. I was working, on Wall Street, and I did get to a point where I was pretty comfortable. And I did like my clients. I liked the work I was doing. I didn't have to do as much of the grunt work as I had to do early in my career, and I focused more so on figuring out what was best for my clients. And my clients were pretty nice and reasonable people. I think I really, for a long time, thought that I would make an impact in the black community, the black diaspora community, and it was actually Andrew, a business partner, who year after year would remind me, "Hey, you're doing well on Wall Street. You seem to be very comfortable, but remember when we met and you said you wanted to make an impact in development, make an impact in communities in America and ultimately in Africa. I'm a first generation Nigerian American." So I think that was always kind of in the back of my mind. In 2013, 2014, coming from a recession, coming off a recession, you do realize just how replaceable everybody is. I remember when I first started, someone would get fired every other week, it felt like, for years. And I realized that that didn't sit well with me, and I wanted to be in a position where I could start to build wealth for myself, for my family, and where my compensation wasn't tied to my ability to show up to work every day and be in a seat and serve my clients. The real way to build wealth is, at least in the context of America, most wealth is generated via real estate, where you can put in the work, do the hard work up front, and then build a sustainable enough portfolio where you can just start generating passive returns and passive incomes, not only for myself, but for others in my network, friends and family who believed in the vision. So that was the initial impetus to kind of move away from something very operational, where there was no scenario in banking where I would just get paid based on what I'd done in the past. It's very, what have you done for me lately? That we want to build something that could be sustainable and provide wealth for our communities. Detroit kept coming up, and I did my research of places that made sense to invest in real estate. Detroit kept coming up as a place where you could get high, the property value was lower, so you could actually make a bigger impact that way. But the yields seem to be pretty high from your cost-based perspective, meaning what you invest versus what you can get out from a renting or sell perspective. But you have these conflicting narratives with the artists kind of coming in and this vibrant, artistic and urban farming community with the images you see of crime, political corruption, et cetera. And at that point, the show was actually in the middle of bankruptcy. But that whole scenario, seemed very compelling to me if you couple it with the history of the city. This was this was sort of a mecca for Black wealth for a very long period of time. This was,
birthplace of the Black middle class.
Birthplace of Black middle class. It's at the highest per capita Black income in the country, and also the highest for Black folks and majority folks, highest ratio of home ownership. Folks that have really rich legacy of home ownership. So create a scenario, where you go from being this pinnacle of even technological innovation, with the automobile industry, this pinnacle of cultural innovation with Motown and techno, this massive industrial shipping infrastructure with the Canadian border, from all these really great, amazing kind of international renowned things to the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history, which created a dynamic where you had a lot of housing vacancy, you had a lot of housing values plummet pretty dramatically. We saw an opportunity to come in while Detroit was kind of rectifying its balance sheet to help the city, to help invest in the housing stock, to invest in these communities where these were African American communities, but that still had a meaningful percentage of home ownership. Help bring value by investing thoughtfully in a concentrated way in its neighborhoods.
So if you think in terms of your customers, who are you serving with this business? I mean, I know there's the greater scenario of the city and so forth, but in terms of on a specific day-to-day basis, who are you serving at Century Partners?
So I say we have two main customers. One are our tenants. So we have a portfolio now of around 180 rental units. So the folks that live in those units and that pay us money every month to live there are our tenants as well as investors. So we've raised about $8 million since 2015 to finance the acquisition, redevelopment of a bunch of different real estate assets in different neighborhoods in the city. So making sure that our investors are properly updated, they get their quarterly service reports, they have access to know what's going on at any point in time. I'd say those are our two main bases that we serve.
So I was thinking about this last night before I came over here. You could look at those investors as partners, or you could look at them as another customer segment, like you say. And from that standpoint, you're almost running two different businesses, because you could be an investment fund in real estate without doing the real estate development, or you could be doing real estate development without the investing fund, right?
Absolutely. So we're vertically integrated. So we don't just do the fundraising, we also manage the construction of the houses, we manage the acquisition, we have a property management company in-house, Bell Asset Management, that does the property management for all the assets, whether it's single family houses to 48 unit multifamily buildings. We have an in-house real estate brokerage, Prep Realty, that manages the sales and leasing of all of our units. And we have a construction company, August Design Builds, that we have used to manage the construction, act as a general contractor for some of the construction. So for us, particularly as a small company, we're not a massively large developer, we're not a massive fundraiser or a fund management company. For us, it's important, and we're in an operating environment that can be challenging. Detroit isn't the most affluent. The neighborhoods we're operating aren't the most affluent neighborhoods. It is a challenging operating environment. So for us, it's really important to know what's going on before at any time, know how customer kind of tenant demand is shifting, understand the demographics of who our customers are, have really tight controls around how much our expenses, so how much money we're spending on the property management side. All of that's important in creating a very vertically integrated full service development company that we hope to continue to scale over time.
So thinking in terms of those renters, those clients, I guess mostly they're renting, although you have sold some properties. But thinking in terms of the clients there, what are some of the kind of unique things that Century Partners brings to the table beyond what some other outfit that's renting properties to people could do?
So I think for us, we're one of the few companies that are focused on neighborhood development in the city. And this is in a small format. We've got the single family houses that are rented out to, let's say, 3 to 5 individuals, or the small multifamily houses in the neighborhood. We're one of the few companies that are really trying to develop a robust portfolio and real company servicing this demand. And particularly in light of COVID, it's become even more pronounced, a demand for cost-efficient housing, for space, for community, to live in a neighborhood where you can know your neighbors, live in a 4-unit building, you know your co-occupants of the building, you have shared community space. I think in a COVID environment where proximity to work is less valuable, where there's economic uncertainty, so that the amount of money you're spending, you're paying more attention to. I think having access to affordable housing and more common, larger spaces while you're working from home has become more paramount than ever. So we're actually picking up some demand from folks who used to live downtown, so that building over there, who don't see the point of paying $2,000 to live in a 2-bedroom apartment with no outdoor space. They'd rather pay $1,000 maybe to live in and have outdoor space and be in a community and know their neighbors and have that kind of community connectivity that they're not able to have with bars and restaurants and sports events now not taking place downtown. So I think that's something we can provide really well rehabbed, well property managed housing that I think fits the modern preferences more so than ever, particularly in light of this the COVID epidemic. And then from a multifamily perspective, we're focusing on kind of Class B rental housing. So that's housing that isn't very expensive. It is affordable. But we believe that just because you're not paying $2,000 a month in rent as an individual, you still should have access to quality housing that's close to your job, and that you can be proud of. So I think from a value perspective, that's where we kind of carve out a niche. And also, since we're not a $1 billion company, we are able to focus on smaller deals. So we're trying to build something sustainable. But it creates a scenario where we're not competing with the big institutional funds. We're looking at apartment buildings of 500 units or more. And we're able to, because of how we're capitalized, we do have a better advantage than some of the smaller guys, so folks that maybe are 1 or 2 or 10 or 15 houses at a time. We're kind of caught by this middle niche. We can employ capital more efficiently than some of the smaller guys and escape the kind of the focus of the more large institutional real estate players.
So it sounds like you're trying to be operationally more professional than some of the smaller outfits and provide this kind of neighborhood feel, community feel for people, and provide good value for dollar.
Economic value, that's key. I think if you can provide economic value and community, and you can kind of deliver consistency, particularly around property management, you can kind of create pretty good real estate sustainable business.
Tell me how you go about getting these customers on the renting side. Not that we'll talk about the investment side later, but how do you get these customers?
And that's just traditional real estate marketing tools. So our in-house brokerage, Prep Realty, they're responsible for the Prep Realty. So they're responsible for all of our sales and leasing efforts. So they'll post once a house is, let's say, fully rehabbed. They'll take pictures of the home, create a listing, and post it on Zillow, Trulia, HotPads, and the MLS. Once they're posted on those websites, anybody can come in. They handle all the inbound inquiries. We'll have an application process. So if they are interested in the property, they pay their application fee, they fill out the application, it gets kicked up to us, we review the application. If we approve, they pay security deposit, and then we can coordinate a moving date.
Does that work pretty well?
Yeah, it works. It's pretty seamless.
So you don't have any trouble finding clients for these?
No, not really. I mean, particularly now, demand has been stronger than ever. We're often now leasing apartments before the previous renter has moved out. I think in part because of the value we're providing is now so more than ever, more finely attuned to consumer and renter preferences. So we're finding demand to be very, very strong. I would say at times in the past, when we haven't found those traditional channels to work, we have done some in-person kind of flyering at Wayne State University or some of the local universities in the area, particularly for some of the smaller kind of micro type units we have in the neighborhoods that don't have as big a natural demand. But for the most part, those online channels work pretty well.
And who are these clients, if you could kind of characterize them in some way?
It ranges. It ranges. A lot of it is driven by the neighborhood we're in. So we're focused. Our goal is to identify areas that we think are good communities that are close enough to downtown and midtown. In each of those communities, though, they offer a different value proposition to the residents. So, for example, our investments, our houses on the East English Village, you typically have working class. From a rental perspective, working class, folks of color, and more families on that east side area. And where we're at in the North End, you're getting kind of younger, recent college graduates, folks that are more entrepreneurial, as well as grad students. But that demographic tends to attract a little younger, more single, and folks that are kind of just starting out on their professional journeys. So it really runs the gamut, but mostly driven by the neighborhood.
So this may seem a little arcane, but tell me how you go about closing a deal with these people. What happens on move-in day? Just walk me through the process.
That's a very granular tech question. Yeah, so it's right now that's part of what we spent the last couple of years doing is really creating a strong process that governs every aspect of the delivery service. So from the listing, we've built out an internal kind of database platform that helps us with the record keeping and follows. We have a record for a tenant as they move through every step of the process. So from application submitted to application approval to scheduling of the move-in date to receipt of the security deposit. We have our in-house property manager that will do all the communication. Once the tenant is approved, security deposit is paid, a move-in date is settled. We have a welcome package that includes all the information they need to know about their home. It has the information for DTE, information for the security system, information for them to order their trash containers, the dates that the trash pickup is, the contact information for us. We do everything. All of our maintenance requests are handled on a system called Text Line. So from their perspective, they just can text a maintenance complaint. They can text a photo. We have a computer system where all of us can see the complaints as they're coming in. We can assign the complaints to different people. We can our property manager creates work orders that get sent to different maintenance folks. All of this is done within this project system. But to more specifically answer your question, what happened on move-in day, they will, once the, let's say September 1st is the move-in date, we make sure security deposit is paid and first month's rent is paid, all that's done electronically. Prior to really last month, we did everything, most of the security deposits were paid via Venmo, or you can deposit a check directly into our bank account. Now we have it, so we're using this company called QuickPay, where they just get a link, they upload their information, and they can pay via QuickPay directly into our bank account. So now we don't do Venmo anymore. We have a move-in inspection, so once the first day, they'll come to the office here, pick up their keys. They'll go to the apartment. They'll check all the conditions of the property, make sure it's up to snuff. Before they actually move in, we'll do our own kind of inspection of the property, make sure that not any kind of little things that may have been missed in the renovation are taken care of prior to moving. Make sure to do that at minimum 2 days prior to the moving. Once they move in, they'll do their own checklist, and we'll have a record for what the current condition, agreed upon current condition of the property is. So when they move out, we have this memorialized list of what that current condition is, which will affect the percentage of their security deposit that they pay. So it's a pretty regimented process, and we've been fine tuning it over time. It's pretty good now.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a good thing is that you have a process,
Absolutely.
well-defined process. And you were actually getting into what was going to be my next question with some of the maintenance strategy and the service tickets and all that kind of thing. I imagine that's one of the things that enables you to keep customers, right, going forward. But in addition to that kind of thing, what are some of the kinds of ways that you create this stickiness with your customers to where they want to stay with you and re-up,
Yeah. Your stickiness is interesting in leasing. I think if you provide quality property management, you're more likely to have the tenants stay. But I don't think it's a situation where if you provide excellent quality management, they're definitely going to stay. I mean, people are moving based on whatever's happening in their lives. If they're getting a new job, if they find out a roommate, if they have a falling out with their roommate, if they're getting married, there are a bunch of life events that I think play a much bigger role in whether or not a tenant decides to leave a space if the property management is just adequate. So we make sure that we're going to be responsible as property. We make it very easy for people to submit maintenance requests. They can get the text line, they can do it from their phone. We're able to compile work orders that get sent to a number of vendors that we use pretty consistently. They understand how we like to communicate. They understand our protocols, particularly in a COVID environment. Anytime maintenance request is done, we make sure that within the work order, the vendor, we make sure that the work order will say, you must wear a mask, you must inform the tenant and the vendor shouldn't be in the same room at the same time. We take the safety of our tenants really important. We take that's really important to us, and I hope that the tenants feel that way as well. So I would say that's how the general maintenance works. I think for us, we do want to be responsive, and we want to treat everybody with respect. Andrew and I, we live side by side with our tenants, and we live in the rental properties that the company owns. So we wouldn't, rent a unit that we wouldn't live in ourselves. And I think that helps to create some kind of stickiness, with tenants. And it's been pretty successful so far.
Now, at some point in the past, you mentioned security also being an issue, and that you provided some security resource for your clients. Are you still doing that sort of thing?
Yeah. So particularly in the Boston, Edison, and North End neighborhoods, where I would say we have probably around 60 tenants or so. We have security pads in each house via GSS security, and we also pay for security patrol. So there's a red truck that will patrol the neighborhood every so often to just provide extra eyes on the street. So we pay extra into that, and that security system is also used by leveraged by the entire neighborhood. That security system also, there's a number that any tenant can call where the security company will kind of pay extra attention to their home. If, let's say they're out on vacation for a week, or they'll pick up circulars. And it's like even though they're absent, someone is still there. So, I mean, fundamentally, with real estate, the most important thing is to create a space where people feel safe and secure. It doesn't matter how nice the house is; the neighborhood has to feel secure for folks to want to continue to live there. So we take that safety and security of paramount importance.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the limiting factors on the growth of the business? I mean, if this was a retail store, you want to know how can you get more customers to come in, but it's a different kind of thing because you have to be able to create more units. Yeah. I don't know if the limitation is how fast you can build units or how many people are out there who want units, but what would you say?
It's a good question. I think the limitations, part of the reason why we were attracted to Detroit was, unlike New York, you could develop in neighborhoods without displacing anybody because of the high degree of vacancy. So in the New York environment where there's such high occupancy, the only way to buy some and you have lots of investors, lots of people looking to invest, so you're not really making any profit because you're buying it, you're buying something at a steal. There's just way too many eyes, there's way too much demand for that market where you're making money on acquisition. The only way you're making money is if you're increasing the cash flow. And so that means that you're getting in a renter or a tenant that's paying more than the previous one did. So it kind of comes in parcel and tandem with displacement. Detroit's unique in that you do have lots of vacant housing stock, and unfortunately you still have a ton of vacant housing stock. So our constraint isn't necessarily the supply of homes. Our constraint is going to be kind of twofold. It's going to be financing and the labor pool for construction in the city. So for us, that financing is a bifold issue. It's equity financing and debt financing. And then on the labor side, it's making sure that we've got high quality contractors that can continue to perform the work. And I think I think the debt finance market can be challenging in the city, although it has shown some signs of improving. And the labor market probably is kind of the toughest constraint. We pride ourselves in our ability to keep good contractors, in part because we pay them quickly for good work. They don't have to wait 30, 60, 90 days to get paid. So we've been able to develop a core group of folks that are loyal. But we need to expand it and grow it. And I would say those are the two main constraints.
So turning to the revenue, what are the main revenue streams for the company?
So we talked earlier about how we're vertically integrated. And for us, again, because we're not a $1 billion fund, it helps to have a diverse array of revenue streams. So on the money that we do raise, we charge an annual fund management fee. That's one point of revenue. On the property management side, we charge a percentage of the rents that are collected, and that's to pay for the staff that's responding to maintenance. We're paying taxes. We're responding to we're coordinating the vendors. So all that's the property management fee. We charge on the real estate broker side. There's a tenant acquisitions fee. So when they go out and get a tenant, there's a fee associated with that, which is typically one month's rent. And we charge when we do secure debt financing. Debt financing is way more efficient than equity financing. It doesn't dilute the equity. So we'll charge a debt arrangement fee when we take on debt. If we have to personally guarantee the debt, we also charge a fee for that. So when you personally guarantee something, that means that if anything goes wrong, that comes on you, so that they can get to your personal assets. So all those various points of income create, I think, some stability that allows us to continue to reinvest in our company, reinvest in our staff, grow our team, and build something sustainable that's hopefully going to be around for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. So on things like the broker fee, right? If you have an in-house broker, aren't you charging yourself and paying yourself? How does that generate more revenue?
Yeah, well, so for us, it's really important to have a lot of control over all the aspects of the business. So you get to a point where you can either pay someone else with limited control and accountability, or charge the same fees to someone within our team.
Yeah.
And we're able to leverage that.
So that's revenue that's not leaving.
It's not leaving.
the
So now it's
company.
captive. I can get better service, which can generate better returns for my investors at no additional expense.
Yeah. Okay. So of those revenue streams, can you give me a sense of this, like prioritize them, or the relative size of those things?
So So I would say that I think the fund management fees are sort of the baseline fees. So those are fees that we count on. It keeps the lights on. It keeps the operations going, and those are, say, probably our most meaningful and consistent. And those are the ones you can project out with more certainty, because they're just driven based on how much equity is raised. Those other, and the property management fees, I would say, are the second most stable. They're more difficult to project out because we don't know necessarily how many rental units we're going to have. We're in the process of selling houses and buying houses, but that is probably a big. That is a meaningful income stream. And then all the other points of income are more episodic. So when we take out permanent financing, well, that's a stream. That happens maybe once a year, or maybe once every other year. Mm-hmm. Those are more episodic, but when in our financial planning for the next 12 months, 24 months, we do kind of create a forecast of what all those income streams will be, which also allows us kind of greater insight into how we should be spending our time. Mm-hmm. And what is the most efficient place to dedicate our internal team resources so we can continue to grow the pie, continue to expand the business, and move on a sustainable basis.
So these in-house operations, again, like the construction, the property management, the brokerage, rental brokerage kind of thing, do you ever offer those outside of the company?
That's a good question. So right now, the only company that does anything outside of Century is the brokerage, Prep Realty. And that was really the intent. I think when we first moved, I felt like we were paying a lot of money to brokers and getting a very inconsistent response, very consistent. There was an expectation for what we needed, and it was a constant kind of having to message and reprioritize and kind of express to these various groups of people how we like to do business and how we like to negotiate. And so by kind of creating a brokerage, we were able to, one, have that process way more streamlined, have an entity that knows exactly what we're looking to buy, exactly how we like to do business, that's kind of actively looking for deals for us, and knows how we like to run the leasing process. So that was really critical. But it also, it served, I think, a big need in the market. I think because properties in Detroit historically have been much lower than the adjacent suburbs, I think the corresponding quality of real estate broke agents who decided Detroit was worth spending time in was very small. And so in developing this and kind of solving a need for ourselves, kind of more responsive, more professional real estate brokerage service, I think we're also providing another need for Detroit to have a brokerage that can do residential, can do commercial, can do leasing, is professional, is responsive, is accountable. That's been I think that'll be a big driver of growth for that entity as well.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of those aspects of those possibilities for the business before, but even in terms of property management, you have all these people who have bought like 1 or 2 units in Detroit, and they need somebody to manage that property.
I think you may have to edit this out. I don't think of property management as a profit center. I think of it as a way for us to get lots of data on who our tenants are and how they're shifting and what costs are and how to most efficiently manage the operational costs. Because ultimately, from a return perspective, returns are going to be driven by 2 primary things. It's how you're managing your costs. You're not going to increase the rent more than the market. The market kind of is what the market is for your product. And depending on your product, your rent's going to be higher or lower, but really it's going to be a margin control. And are you able to address maintenance requests in a timely but cost-efficient manner? And your other kind of way you get money is appreciation, and you can't control that. So the really main way that it's fully within your control is how you maintain costs. So I look at it as more of a cost containment and information component of the business as opposed to a profit center, because I don't think it's a high margin business. So I'm not particularly interested in having that company do other people's property management. I don't think that's it. But on the broker side, that's different, right? That's a low margin. It's not an operationally intensive business, right? It's just a commission business.
Yeah.
And the better is a business where the better you do, the better your reputation is, and the more business just comes to you. So even from that perspective, when we first started the company, late 2018, I'd say 100% of the revenue it made was from Century. And in 2019, I think 80% of the revenue was from Century. Now this year, around 55% of the revenue is from Century, and the goal is for that number that proportion of our business to continue to decrease over time.
What about construction? How do you see that as a general purpose business?
Yeah, construction again is more about control than profit. I want to create a space where we know, because labor is of such a premium in this market, there just isn't enough. There aren't enough talented, reliable contractors to adequately service the demands. For us, it's really important, again, from a data perspective, to know who the best contractors, who's reliable, what are the costs, how do we control costs around material, how do we manage kind of timing and delays. Right now, that's how the construction company operates. So it's not really to make money, it's not generating profit, but I think it helps us short out the check to make sure we're able to deliver our product on time and on budget.
So you're still using contractors, you don't have your own construction people?
No. So even a construction company, I would say it's more of a
construction management
entity. It doesn't have any employees on staff or any tradespeople.
Yeah. So that brings us into what are the main costs associated with the business?
So
if you could kind of prioritize those.
Yeah, so I would say from a development perspective, your costs are going to be, really the employees, right? So it's paying a property manager, construction manager, development manager. Those are the main costs. You have your overhead costs, which are the rent we pay to our landlord. We're not the only landlord. We also have a landlord.
Yeah.
You pay, we pay for parking, we pay for internet, all these kind of overhead non-generating items that are important to kind of keep the operations going. So between that and personnel, from a development perspective, those are the majority of the costs. And you got to keep your people happy. So having team building events, making sure we've got a nice space that people are comfortable going to. They have easy parking that they can get to. So we really focus on keeping our guys happy so they can grow with us together. And then so that's just on the development side. Now on the kind of management side, the costs associated with property maintenance, the costs associated with actually the construction of homes. But those are all kind of funded separate from the cash flow of the actual development company.
Okay. So I know we've touched on this in quite a few spots here, but what are the kinds of, if I think just on a day-to-day basis, what are the activities you all have to be really good at in order to be successful in this business?
That's an interesting question. I think away from just the operations, of the business, which are making sure that our main clients, which are our tenants, are adequately being responded to in a timely manner and their main requests addressed. I say really it's an information exercise. So really knowing what the trends are in the market, understanding how, particularly in this environment, how regulation is going to impact our day-to-day, how the financing environment is going to impact our ability to really gain leverage to grow the portfolio. I think you just really want to be, real estate, you're operating in the real world. These are real tangible assets. So just being really attentive to the environment, both from a political perspective, a social perspective, an economic perspective. I mean, even with COVID, making sure we knew all the information for how tenants could access unemployment, the things they should know with respect to basic sanitary stuff, so we can communicate that to all of our tenants and make sure that they were properly equipped to deal what they had to go through. So I think it's really just an information exercise, like really being on top of trends and making sure that we're always thinking about how that information will affect our business going forward, and we can adapt our strategy in different ways to meet it.
Mm-hmm. So coming in again day to day, you and Andrew, what takes your mind share? If you just divide the day up, what do you find yourself spending the most time doing?
It really depends. That's one of the great things about one of the challenging things about being an entrepreneur is that no day is necessarily the same. So we've got some the kind of the day to day of the business, whether it's construction management, property management. You have more strategic elements, which are kind of bank financing on the construction side, bank financing on the permanent financing side, and equity capital raising. So those are all kind of medium to long term items. We are in a political environment, so whether we're interacting with members, folks from the city council, folks from the city of Detroit, making sure that we're all on the same page from a political perspective. We operate in a community, so we have a big development where community engagement is an important thing. So making sure we're in simpatico with how the community is feeling or responding, to their needs. We've had some moments of time we had to spend a lot of time going to community engagement meetings, going to block club meetings to see what's going on there. So it really, depending on the time, if it's tax season, we've got to make sure our books are in order, and making sure our investors have their K1. So it really sort of depends on, I would say, the season, and making sure we're effectively balancing the short-term priorities of the business along with the medium and long-term. Make sure we're well funded. We're not sort of missing out on any sort of market trends, and that we're constantly feeding the machine from an acquisition perspective. We're always having insights what the best deals are, whether they're off market or on market, and developing long-term strategies. I think there are big challenges in development in general, particularly for developers of color. So one thing we're focused on from a very strategic perspective is how do we create an environment where developers of color do have better access to both equity and debt. And in America, debt is how you really cost-efficient debt can make your business or can break your business. And I think developers of color often, the debt is, when their interaction with debt, it's typically more extractive than productive. So trying to create a system that not only helps solve the problem for us, but for the larger ecosystem is something that we're focused on right now. So.
Mm-hmm. So again, we've touched on this too, but what do you consider some of the key resources of the company?
From the value proposition perspective?
Well,
or from
intellectual resources, physical resources, financial resources.
I think we don't feel like we're held to any blueprint. I think we can really think about, I think part of the benefit of being a small company is that you can react quickly. We don't have a huge bureaucracy to make decisions. So we're able to move quickly and move aggressively when we see a significant market opportunity. I think that is a huge benefit. It's a larger company, and I think we're capitalized in a way. I think a lot of developers often have pretty onerous debt requirements, and that the way they're funded can restrict their growth and have them kind of compel them to focus on more sort of short-term type of development strategy. Because the way we're funded primarily with equity, and we use debt to accelerate returns, not necessarily to create them. We're able to, I think, be more strategic in the way that we approach deals, the way we approach opportunities, the way that we assess risk, and hopefully make long-term decisions that are in the best interest of our investors and shareholders.
So if I were to think in terms of what is Century Partners' secret sauce, I
I
would.
told you it wouldn't be a secret, right?
Yeah, well, sort of a secret. Don't tell anybody. But as I see, some of the key capability, it's the technical sophistication of the founders combined with this nimble approach and the vertical integration. Those things together seem to be
Yeah.
kind of like a special mix.
You said that a lot better than I did. Yeah, I'll take that. I think also our backgrounds. I think from a founder perspective, if you take it even a step back, I think anytime you create a business and you're in partnership with someone and you have to make decisions on a joint basis, that can be very trying. I think all partnerships can be very, very difficult. So I think one key to success is just having a really strong partnership of the founders. Really strong relationship. In a way, it kind of supersedes the business. A lot of companies ultimately they're not able to make it because their founders aren't able to get along. So before we started the company, Angela and I had a really long friendship, and I think that enables facilitates a trust that allows us to make decisions that are in the best interest of one another, the best interest of the company. So I think that probably, from a longevity perspective, is more important than any technical expertise, technology expertise, the vertical integration is that foundation. From a relationship perspective is really strong. And then I think if you couple, I've got a kind of background in financing and kind of the detail-oriented rigor that comes through the investment banking kind of training format. I think, Amber's background in, arts and film and real estate, when you kind of couple that together, it creates a really kind of powerful foundation, and that kind of effect is woven through the DNA of the company.
Yeah. Let's move this back a little bit because it's cutting your head off a little bit. I can raise this a little bit also. So, you guys, you seem to have something that my co-founders and I had back in our business. There seems to be an element of the mission there that's not just about the nuts and bolts. There's a certain mission that relates to what you're trying to do in terms of the community, in terms of a certain pride that goes beyond just business execution and helps you kind of keep this cohesive focus on what you're trying to do.
Definitely, you have to have values and principles, and in any business you're making a lot of decisions, all the time, and if there's no through line, if there's no value, if there's no guiding principle that informs all the decisions, then I think your ability to be sustainable is significantly impacted because there's effort involved in every single decision. So if there's a foundation of kind of shared principles and values, that makes the decision process a lot more streamlined. It allows you to make good decisions consistently. And in business, there are always going to be ups and downs, but I think that having consistent kind of output, consistent decision making is a key differentiator. So you're not kind of randomly on the spot reacting to things as they come about, but you have a program and a shared foundation so that you can make kind of uniform, consistent, and reasonable responses as things come up.
So one of the aspects of the business that I found to be like a big area, bigger than a lot of companies that we get involved with, is this whole partnerships area. You guys have this partnership with the city and with platform development. So just in general, kind of tell me about the partnerships that are important to the business at this point.
Yeah, I think, for us, we want to make sure we're doing right by, the community that we're working in. And I think for us, that relationship has to be real. It can't just be talk, and we put our money where our mouth is. And like you said, I think, we live in the neighborhoods that we're developing in. And in terms of, choosing who to partner with, we are in the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit is a massive landowner in the city. We're in development, so we need access to to good land at affordable prices that isn't driven by speculation. And we thought, particularly looking at the Fitzgerald project, that our mission was aligned with the cities that we fundamentally believe in, that there's value in these communities, in these neighborhoods.
Tell me about that project. I don't want to assume that the students know about that.
Yeah, so that project calls for the redevelopment of a neighborhood between University of Detroit Mercy and Marygrove. There are over 100 houses that need to be rehabbed and over 200 vacant lots that need some kind of land stewardship. So we started there, and part of even kind of the thesis of moving to Detroit was that we believe that there's real value in the neighborhoods. And there's not just value downtown, there's real value in the communities that are here. There's real value, in the housing stock. These houses are beautiful, but just need some significant monetary investment, so to help kind of reveal, the talent and connectivity that already existed within it. And that was the premise of all our work in Detroit. In the Fitzgerald community, we thought the same thing, that there's real value. You have families that have lived in this neighborhood for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. These are the critical components of what makes for a solid community. The issue was there's significant disinvestment that happened, over decades. So, we thought if we had a good partner, in the city of Detroit and a developer partner, that we could go about, if we have the right financial resources, unveiling, the value that already was there, improving things around, safety, security, investing, a decent amount of money into the actual housing stock so that it's attractive and kind of meets the kind of character and richness of the history of the neighborhood. So, that's how we approach that development, and that's how we approach any neighborhood that we look at it. We're not creating community. We're helping to work with the community to help reveal that value, so that what we see from a community perspective, from an architect's perspective, we're helping to kind of narrow the gap between that value and the nominal price value. And in the areas that we've worked in, we've seen that converge over time.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of other strategic partnerships, you have relationships with these contractors that do the rehabbing of these properties.
They make the magic. I mean, to me, all the contractors are magicians. And in a way, even though we're paying them, oftentimes, I feel like, they're our clients. It's almost like they're a customer as well, because we are entirely dependent on them being properly capitalized and them being able to find adequate work, so that they can continue, the magic of the home renovation process. So keeping those relationships. The contractors that we worked with since we moved here in 2015, many of them we're still working with, and the guys who perform, they can kind of deliver projects on time. They really, really enjoy working with us, and our goal is to continue to grow that pool of reliable folks over time as we continue to grow in the city.
Are there other strategic partnerships that are important to the business?
Away from I think the most strategic partnership, the most important strategic partnership is one between all of us as teammates. I think knowing that we're abiding by some of these core values here, that we're communicating, supporting each other, focusing on transparency and honesty and accountability, focusing on only originating kind of strong deals. I think that's probably the most important thing. We're kind of on the same page internally. I feel really good about our ability to go and find deals, to thrive economically, staying disciplined on our origination metrics and origination criteria. I think will lead to something sustainable and special.
So what aspects of your business model right now would you say could stand to be improved?
That's a good question. I would say one thing I would like more transparency, visibility would be on the construction side. So there is an issue with the lack of kind of skilled labor in the market, and I think we could do a better job kind of getting more involved on that side, kind of having a better understanding of what all of the materials cost on per square foot basis, for roofing, for siding, think we're pretty good on the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, that type of pricing. That's pretty clear. But I want this year to get a way more comprehensive understanding of the price per square foot for some of those trades beyond that, and see how. And then I think one thing we can do, if we do know there's a labor shortage, I think we can more specifically isolate the labor with the materials. So if we're understand what the material costs, we're able to actually purchase them, particularly now with the supply issues that are affecting developers, just most industries, the supply chain related to COVID. I think if we're able to understand what the materials we need to purchase are for the next 6 months, purchase those materials, then we can actually get more accurate bids from our labor. And their focus just on implementing the materials should be delivered on site. Their focus just more on doing work as opposed to having to coordinate budget for materials, budget for labor to pick up the materials, getting them to site. We can, I think, take out that logistical part. I think we'll have even more efficiencies on the building side.
So it sounds again like we were talking about before, this ability to complete projects, that's one of the constraints to growth.
Yeah.
If you could generate these buildings at a faster rate, you'd have more clients
Yeah.
who are willing to take these.
Yeah, I agree. And that's with construction, you always hear, you want construction to be done on time and on budget. I think the on budget is definitely something we're good at, but you're stuck with the constraint of on time. And I think when you do have labor shortages, that's always going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, even out in our area, you just can't get people to do things, and because of that, the prices they charge seem to be a little arbitrary.
Yeah.
And it's a tough situation. At the same time, you got a lot of people unemployed, right? So you would think that there would be some opportunity for somebody to create that pipeline, get more people.
You think
in the game.
It's I think we've got some ideas, and it's something that is constantly always top of mind for us. And I think the city has made some strides in trying to create workforce development opportunities and get folks of color, Detroit residents into the skilled trades. They've just sort of really started on that process in earnest, so I'm optimistic. I think it's also up to us as developers to do our part, whether it's kind of making the mechanics of construction simpler for our contractors, or finding ways ourselves to expand the pool of labor.
So you touched on this before, but how do some of the community interests and issues and forces and the government and regulatory considerations, how does all that affect your business?
Yeah, it varies, but even if you think, I think we do a really good job from a tenant underwriting perspective. We're very strict criteria, strict application process for how we accept tenants to lease our units. But sometimes tenants aren't able to pay. Sometimes not every tenant is going to be a good tenant. So from a legislation perspective, they had an eviction moratorium. That eviction moratorium kept getting extended. So even though we have, for the most part, really great pool of tenants, we did have a couple that we weren't able to move because of the eviction moratorium. So that's a specific legislation related thing. We just purchased
due to this COVID situation.
Due to COVID specifically. We purchased our first project-based Section 8 building. It's a 35-unit building on Elmhurst in Northwest Detroit, and closing that in April, of this year. So, that was our first time doing that type of project.
I'll explain Section 8. That's a rent subsidy.
It's a rent. So for this particular type, so they're kind of, at least from my understanding, there are two types of Section 8. One is just a voucher program, and a voucher is there's a long waiting list, but you get the voucher, you're able to use it for housing assistance for any property in the city or in your municipality that accepts Section 8 voucher. Now this building is different because you don't need to apply for that voucher program. It's if you are considered for the building, you're automatically eligible for Section 8. So you're automatically eligible for housing assistance just by living in the building, and the amount that you pay is dependent on your rent. But it's a heavily regulated, program, so it took some time for us to get up to speed, for what their requirements were, to upload them into our system, to make sure that our systems are talking effectively with one another. And as that system changes, that'll affect how much, we can charge, and rent. How do we get that built into, get to the market, rate rents within those guidelines? That's all kind of regulatory driven. So, there are various, aspects in our job is to really fully understand the regulatory environment and operate accordingly. And that one of our developments, we had 1.8 million in community development block grants. And by understanding our product, we were able to use it so that it didn't function as a sort of a rental subsidy, effectively, but more so, it actually functioned as a subsidy for low-income home buyers to effectively get a grant so they can afford a really nice home in the neighborhood without having an onerous financial burden. So really understanding that product helped us, create up to kind of 10 new first-time home buyers in one of the developments we work in. So we got to base our job to be current and to make sure that all of the resources at our disposal are kind of best suited to develop houses in a way that's economically profitable for ourselves and also creates great places to live for our tenants.
So it sounds like government is a big player in this area in terms of its ability to influence the market and provide opportunities or extract opportunities.
Politics and real estate typically go pretty connected. I think for us, because for the most part, we haven't been focused on kind of government-related deals, or we haven't been focusing on partnering with the city for stuff. It's mostly been finding just good deals. We're not doing these large developments that require tax subsidies or typically require government financing to fill gaps. We really focus on finding deals that just make sense on paper, find deals that pencil out, that meet our minimum return thresholds, that are single family, multifamily, what have you. We've been able to that gives us the autonomy and freedom to move quickly. So I'm not sure what the future will hold. I think when you're working with any municipality as a partner, there are going to be lots of hurdles and timing challenges that you have to navigate. I think that's a tougher way to grow a business that's young. But we're always focused on doing good deals where we can kind of control the timing, control the timeline, understand what resources we have at our disposal, and are not kind of waiting on a municipality to deliver on our promises.
So it sounds like, this COVID-19 affected the business in terms of the rent moratorium or the eviction moratorium. Are there other ways COVID-19 has affected the business?
Yeah, one, it's created in a way, away from the rent moratorium. It is I think people feel a lot of economic uncertainty. They feel a lot of social uncertainty. Even when communicating with our customers, you can feel the angst and the anxiety. I think particularly when at the onset of COVID, because there was so much uncertainty, we did see our rental renewal rates decrease. I think now, and there were also a plethora of either government opportunities, government financing with the SBA or grants. So there was a lot of information coming to us, and we had to make sure we were kind of parsing through all the information and only applying for the things that would be a direct benefit to us, and weren't applying for things that would be distracting. Applying for the EIDL program was good for us. Applying for the Paycheck Protection Program, all that stuff as a business we're able to leverage and sponsor, not only for us, but also encourage all of our contractors. All of our contractors, we make sure, hey, there's this amazing financing, this 30-year financing that's at a really, really cheap rate. You guys need to be applying for this. You may never have this opportunity again. So we really get lots of our contracts to get additional liquidity in response to the government's response to COVID-19. And then we touched on it earlier, there is a shift in renter demands. We're seeing people they're prioritizing more space. They prioritize kind of being in a community. They don't get the community at the bar, they want to get it in their neighborhood. We're seeing, more people buy pets, so they want space for their pets to run around. They want secure off-street parking. They want gardens. So all that stuff. We naturally, because we're investing in neighborhoods, because we have that value proposition, we're able to meet that shift in rent demand. So from that perspective, it's been positive. But anytime there's dislocation, you've got to respond in a way that's going to work best, for you. And anytime there's a disruption, and either a lot of businesses are going to go by the wayside, and some are going to thrive. So we're trying to make sure we're doing everything we can to be on that side that thrives.
So there are businesses like Apple that you could argue.
This company, I think.
You could
Small
argue.
little startup, right?
Yeah, exactly. You could argue they kind of benefited from COVID. Would you say that Century Partners benefited or was disadvantaged or so far, or that it's a wash so far?
I'd say we've certainly been impacted negatively. We've known lots of folks that were close to us that passed away, and we're still seeing the ripple effects from an emotional and just a loss perspective, and that's really challenging to deal with, and it affects our team members from an emotional perspective, and even our ability to connect with one another. We hired 2 people in May, and we just kind of were able to work together as a team cohesively, and we got back to office in June. So all that stuff is disruptive, to the business. Our job as operators are to operate in the best interest of the sustainability of the company and of our investors. And I think in the long run, we're able to kind of take in a lot of information and make the best decision possible from bringing in resources that were available from a market perspective, from an information perspective, educating our tenants, educating our customers who are our contractors, getting them resources so that they're more sustainable, and making sure that the products that we're buying, do fit this new shift in rental practices. So overall, I would never say that whenever you have almost 200,000 people pass away from the disease, that's good for us. But we've been very opportunistic to make sure that we're taking advantage of all the resources available, and taking the time, despite to grow. And since COVID, we have grown. Before this year, the stock market was at all-time highs. January, February. For years, people have been calling for some type of bubble, that we're going to face some type of recession. So in January, in part of response to that, we did raise a new fund. And the thought was that there's going to be some recession at some point. We want to be, have the capital ready so that we can take advantage of buying real assets, hopefully at a good price. And so we didn't expect this massive disruption to happen, but we were well positioned to get good assets, to keep growing, and to expand our team and our returns during some really tough times.
So the other big disruption that's taken place over the last few months is the protests and the related to the killing of several black individuals, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so forth. The Black Lives Matter movement. Has that had an effect on the business in some way?
As a business comprised of its employees, and I think as the majority of our team are African American, men and women, so absolutely it's had an effect on us on an emotional perspective. And we actually just commissioned a mural in the North End of Formula Building that I live in and we've owned since 2016. Commissioned a mural kind of celebrating and elevating women and black women, the African diaspora. It's our obligation as a society to respect and protect all of our people, particularly the people that make the people, the people that are responsible for our society continuing. So that's something that's very personal, to us, and certainly very top of mind. I think as far as next steps, there is a lot of, now so in my lifetime, there's never been more attention on racial inequity and more companies and institutions making a public stand to support efforts that will help reduce racial inequity. So we do have a large project that we're working on to determine, all right, what are the problems plaguing folks of color, Black men and women in our industry? What are the barriers that prevent Black developers from being able to really grow in a sustainable way, being able to really impact the communities that we live in, and how can we create a program that can leverage the hopefully good intentions from the folks making these public statements to support. How can we get that that verbal support tangibly translated in ways that can benefit the Black development community, not only in Detroit, but in cities like Detroit, all over the country. I think we've got some pretty good ideas that we hope to share in the coming weeks.
That'll be welcome, I'm sure.
Yeah, hope so.
So just have a couple questions to wrap up.
Okay.
One of them is, what are your greatest business concerns right now? What keeps you awake at night, if anything?
I love sleeping, Dave, so I sleep pretty good for the most part. I think there's just so much uncertainty, and there's always uncertainty. Nate, that's just part of business, just generally. There's no way to know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we're in a state of heightened uncertainty. You have an economic disaster where we're in now, and you have a health disaster, and you have a social disaster with the racial animus, and you have probably one of the most polarizing elections. And I think the political climate will be very different depending on who takes office in November. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's just, we don't know when there'll be a vaccine. We don't know when we can start meeting with people in person. So there's a lot of all that. I think general uncertainty can create anxiety, and it can be tough to project. Are we going to be in a stagflation environment? Are we going to be in an inflationary environment? It doesn't seem like we're going to be in a deflationary environment. How is that going to affect our investor pitch? How is that going to affect the assets that make sense to originate? And no one knows the answers to these questions. So we have to, our job is to be constant, current on information, and just make educated decisions. But I would say it feels just the uncertainty of how all these different components will work out and interact with one another it's kind of tough to navigate.
So on the other side of things, if everything goes the way you hope it will, what impact will Century Partners have had on the communities that you serve, say in 10 years' time? What do you hope things will look like going down the road?
That's a good question. I hope that the communities that we're working in are healthier, that the people who own homes in these neighborhoods are wealthier, and they have freedom and flexibility and valuable assets they can pass on to the next generation. I hope the communities working are safer. People feel comfortable, walk down the street. They feel like they've got community that they can interact with, rely on, and amenities that they can walk to, and that these communities are really vibrant. People feel happy, and feel and financially secure. I hope that we're able to, influence of the next generation and kind of grow the amount of folks that think of folks of color who look at development as a real thing, that they feel like they can tap into a network of people to help provide guidance and mentorship and actual financial resources for them to physically impact what their community looks and feels like. I think development typically is just kind of an apprenticeship type of business. They take a course, but not who cares, right? It's who's teaching you, who's taking you under their wing, and what financial resources that you have to make an impact. But the choice for what a neighborhood looks and feels like, that's an incredible power. And I would love for more people in the city of Detroit, more people in cities across America to not only feel like they can make an impact on how they grow up and how their family grow up and how their friends grow up and interact with the space, but they have the financial resources to do so on a sustainable way.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the time you've taken. I think we're close to the hour and a half that I promised, but
Flew by. It's fun.
yeah, I really appreciate it. I wish you guys continued success.